Hello, audience. Hello, Pierre. PJ, as I call you.
What's going on, Nikki? How's
All
life?
good. Life's good. We were joking that we might be live on this, but it's not live. We're recording. So, welcome everybody watching the recording. To jump in to generate an insight straight off, Pierre, you've done multiple entrepreneurial endeavors. What's like one thing you've learned out of trying multiple different entrepreneurs? And from your entrepreneurial journey, what have you learned?
If I was to pick, the lessons are so many, but if I was to pick one, I think it would be patience/grit, right? The combination of that, because I think patience in the sense that a lot of people these days they try something for a short period before even starting to realize the fruits, they give up because maybe it's too hard.
But shouldn't you be failing fast though? Like, isn't that contradictory to the point of like you need to fail fast and then move on to the next thing?
No. I think people maybe sometimes have misconceptions of what failing fast means. It doesn't mean that the Northern Star changes every single time. That the main goal changes every single time. It's just your approach towards the main goal, towards that Northern Star. So if you try something and it doesn't work, sometimes we give up way too easily, right, on that process. And I think, of course, given the culture we have nowadays where everything happens in an instant, maybe that has influence on that. But there has to be this good balance of trying something and knowing when to stop, but then also pushing, to that point where you really have tried everything. For the most part, it's like we try one or two things and then it's like, oh, no, this didn't work out. So I should move along. And I think, I think grit has something to do with that as well.
So you mentioned North Star. So like what has been, are you able to summarize somehow what your North Star at some point or currently is, or kind of give some concrete examples of how you've tried everything and then stopped maybe, or kind of like feel you've still persevered despite the difficulty?
Yeah. So it depends on what specific examples we want to give, because on the business side, there's a few. On the sports side, there's too many. On the personal,
let's go to the sports. Let's start there, because we had Juho Nennon in here as my first interview on Just Thoughts. Right. And I believe you've at some point at least played against the guy.
Yes.
All right. Yes. So for the audience, me and PJ, we played half a season together, and PJ just showed up to the games, and I didn't get any playing time.
That was my retirement basketball, but yes, that was fun.
You still can get up and dunk though. Like I haven't been able to do that in like 3 years.
Yes, presently I can.
In fact, just yesterday. Okay, so learning from sports, overcoming.
I think it ties into what I was saying earlier. Yeah. In sports, you get this opportunity to fail a lot faster and to pick yourself back up even faster. In a game, if you are gonna cry over a missed layup, your entire team suffers, not just you. So you learn very quickly that, you know what, I missed this layup, but the next thing I can do is go make the next stop on defense. And then run my ass off so I can position myself properly to get the next layup, so that at least we're continuing this process of moving towards the North Star, in this case, winning the game, right? And I think sports being that really important tool for teaching these kinds of activities, I think is a huge lesson from my part.
Yeah, I think we could take. So Juho mentioned something in the Just Thoughts interview, was why sports is not a good analogy for business in general. But we're not talking about like an analogy for business. We're talking about an analogy for attitude here.
Yes,
and
exactly.
and especially like the fact, or so the main point, Juho's main point was that um, in sports it's a confined environment, like
Mhm.
it's not completely volatile, right? So there's some certain rules you need to follow, and you can play a game to perfection without the rules of the game constantly changing. And in business, the rules of the game might be constantly changing.
Mhm.
So what you said there, teaching kids, especially young individuals, of like perseverance, getting up, trying again. I think there's something to take out of that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
so how about business then? Like you've at least been in one endeavor previously that I helped you out with, that I remember vividly. We were discussing your avid um, how do you say, advocate of well-being in general, and
Yeah.
you had the we bridge
Mm.
experience. Would you mind talking a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a passion project for sure. Um,
Mm,
the idea being that many times we say that we are uh, employees or we own companies. So
mm,
that's a different part of you. And then when you go home, that's a different part of you.
okay.
And I think that's crazy because the brain only has, it's just one. Like it's you, you're the
Mm,
one person. It's not two different yous.
yeah.
Um, and therefore, being able to understand from a starting point what is really important to you,
Mm,
and how much time are you spending on it, how much effort are you putting in there,
mm,
having different pillars with which you can understand what is really important to you, and am I spending much or enough time within
mm,
these pillars, uh, is something that most people don't sit to reflect on, and
mm,
that's a project we had to clarify that, to help people go on this personal journey, but then
mm,
within that personal journey, be um, uh, kind of have the work influence, kind of have the family influence in there as well, and then the friends,
mm.
as of course, to complete the group.
So what was the core product then? You were trying to, if I remember correctly, you were trying to sell the company as a product where people would be able to reflect over how they spend their time, and what is the different energy levels within the companies.
Yeah, it was a corporate well-being solution. Uh,
Mm,
and the idea being that most of the time corporate comes in and says, hey, guess what, we have a speaker who's coming in and they're going to talk about their sports career, and then they're going to teach us how to play
mm,
rugby or some crazy thing, give us some inspirational talk, but then that's
mm,
it, that's where it stops. So instead of having that kind of an approach, you come in, do a little bit of a survey to see which of the five pillars, basic pillars, that your entire organization
mm,
um, needs the most and is spending the least time on. Uh,
mm.
and then you are able to understand this from the company level.
Yeah.
Then you can really tailor make the speakers to focus on that aspect.
Mm,
And then on an individual level, because individually, even though the majority might say that this is the part, like
yeah.
it's personal thing, not the professional part. Uh, then on the individual level, you can also focus on what is it that is your gap, and then how do you bridge it. So the
Mm,
company would be basically providing these solutions for its employees, um,
mm.
to make themselves better. Because let's face it, like if you're a better employee, if you feel better balanced, which is
You're
not
more
necessarily
productive at work. You know,
exact.
makes fully sense.
Yeah.
So what happened there? What roadblocks? Because you're not doing that now, right? So
No.
before we go into like what you're doing now, like what was the why did you decide to like stop trying, right?
Yeah, huge roadblocks. I think the corporate wellness sector
Mm,
is highly competitive and a very difficult market to enter.
mm,
Um, you have too many players, and then us having a tech-related program that did not have a tech co-founder, I think was a big issue, because then our burn rate was a bit high.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was a matter of timing as well. I think we came in a bit early.
Why do you say that? What happened after?
I think
When did you do? So before you answer that question, when was WeBridge again? When did you start that? That was
this is
pre-pandemic,
20,
right?
maybe 2017. Yeah. Oh yeah, 2017,
Yeah.
something like that. 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, like when you're looking at the Nordics, especially, I mean, this is where the competition is the highest in that sector. There are too many providers, and I think the timing was a bit off in terms of the specifics of that product, and most importantly, I think just did not have enough runway to complete that project. Yeah.
Okay. So
But
when would have
fantastic.
been a better like if you would have chosen a new time to do it? Runway is of course a different question. Like what would have changed in the environment for it to be a better timing in your mind? You can never you always usually get timing wrong. It's like legislation change or something else that might be objectively a trigger. But like
Yeah.
what would you kind of guess that would be a better timing for would have been a better timing for the product?
Yeah, I think and this is very objective as well,
Yeah, of
subjective, sorry.
course.
Um uh, Personally, I would think that maybe right around now, right after the pandemic, when these issues are really like front and center on everybody's minds, on how do you provide support for people who you don't see every time, every day? How do you make these employees' well-being not only fit the entire team, but then how do you make it fit for these individuals? How do you make it a bit more personal while still benefiting the entire team? Um,
Fair enough.
I think, yeah,
That to me sounds like what should have had happen was you having more runway to be there when the pandemic hit, because
yes,
that's when people
yep,
stopped actually seeing. So you were a bit early in that sense that if you would still be alive and doing it when the pandemic hit, it would have been suddenly make a lot more sense as well to kind of get that data when you weren't seeing people.
yeah. If whatever happened in Wuhan or in the US or wherever the origin was happened earlier, that would have been perfect. No,
No, let's not go there.
no,
Anyway, uh, going to a different topic before going into what you do now. You've always been very avid in helping kids, and you talk a lot about how that gives you energy. So how has that shaped like who you are and kind of where you get your energy from? Since we were talking about well-being.
yeah. So as somebody who was born and raised in Gambia, um, I've always had this thing in me, and especially raised by lower middle class parents. Uh, I've always had this idea of being able to contribute positively to society, because even though the neighborhood we lived in was not, the best financially viable neighborhood, being lower middle class meant that we were doing a little bit better, which meant that most of the kids around the neighborhood, for example, would come in and eat lunches or different stuff with us. My parents never complained, always helped, always supported. So for me, it was very, very natural that I started playing basketball very late. And
What's very late?
like 17, like organized basketball,
Ah,
like
okay.
17,
Okay,
right?
that's super late.
Yeah, exactly. And I was only fortunate that when I went to the US to study, that this university thought I was good enough to play basketball and actually spent time to teach me. Um, of course, being a fast learner helps, but not entirely. But I feel that, like, in Gambia, I definitely was not the best player. There were so many people who were better than me, but never had the opportunity. So it has always been, what can I do to give back? And for 10, 12 years, whilst I was playing professionally, I always went back home to give these camps, national camps that had all the major sports present, all the major sports teams, coaches present, recruited students from across the country talking about education through sports and the importance of it and developing skills. But for me, what always stuck, and to this day, I always remember that I went with this idea that, oh, I'm giving back. And then I left with this thing that I gained even more than I expected. Like, these kids are so smart, like, so, like, they're like sponges, and they know so much already. But we see them as maybe less than, too little, or whatever. And for me, like, interacting with those kids, understanding how different they are, coming from different parts of the country, and still learning from them, was a major turning point in my life. And that has also continued to shape how I see the world. For example, in what I do these days, connecting between Europe and Africa is a major part of it, because too many times we think that Africa is this dark continent. When I see these young people, when I see these adults who are doing amazing stuff, like mind-blowing stuff, and I see the growth potential, but I see the actual steps that are being taken towards this growth potential, and mostly none of that.
Before we go into all of the great ideas you see in your work today, and that inspirational, just like to summarize your thought there, was that, like, actually you thought you wanted to give back, but then you receive so much more in return from the kids, and the energy and the inspiration from it.
Yeah, exactly. So a good example. So we used to do, right after lunch, we would have these open sessions where the kids can be as creative as they wanted, like 30 minutes. They can be in groups, they can come by themselves. And the amount of stuff that these kids were coming up with, whether it was through theater plays, whether it was through educational content, or tips, and like, all the coaches and people who were working in those camps didn't miss those times when the kids
Are
were
you still doing that? That sounds like I need to go
yeah.
somewhere.
No, that was so we had a 10-year mandate. I told them I'm going to commit for 10 years. And in Africa, it happens that usually when you start something, people try to copy. And the idea was that we would start something, people will copy, and hopefully we'll have a bunch of people doing the same things.
And what happened? Have you people being copying?
Yes, there were a few people who started doing camps. Not sure how all that ended, but I made sure my 10-year mandate was
okay,
done.
fair enough. You don't have a decade of your time is already a lot, if you will.
I think we ended up with 12 years, not 10, but yeah.
Yeah, and the fact you grew up in a household where your parents invited, like, people over, I've been grateful enough to experience that in your home as well. Taking the kids to for the culinary experience, which is the Gambian cuisine, which is spicy, like really spicy, and the culture of, like, just like spending the whole day there with the fam and friends, and people are just like come and go openly. And I think kind of your upbringing truly shows in how you act today still.
Absolutely.
Grateful for having you as a friend. So scooting over to what you do today, you already mentioned a bit of it, but to get things going, I'll share a picture quickly. So I was looking at pictures of, like, when have we gotten together
Yeah.
and kind of somehow highlight what you're doing now. So this is from your LinkedIn page. I realized I took two pictures. We're going to take a look at the two pictures I took from this event. I take very little pictures, but you can see me. You can see me there
Uh,
looking over the soldiers. So um, this is a great segue to like what is remote? What do you do? And why do you feel these gatherings you've organized a couple so far has been good for you or for business, and how they kind of highlight what remote is?
yeah, good question. And yeah, look at Oscar really concentrating
Yes.
there. So remote is uh, foremost at its core a market entry company. So we help European companies who want to enter the African markets and vice versa,
Mm,
uh, with different aspects of you know their needs. So whether it's feasibility studies, whether it's partner identifications, etc.
mm,
Um, but then we've also evolved to doing more than that. So we've been or started to own our own companies. For example, companies that we've seen that are successful in Europe that
mm,
could have big potential. Um, and through their owners, we partnered to spin off the companies in
mm,
different parts of Africa. And then also on the third part, we support with financing, so funding related stuff.
mm,
So being able to help um, scale ups, SMEs, VCs,
mm.
you name them, raise funding is something that we also do.
And how big is your team now?
We're eight.
You're eight.
So we have so we have a couple here in Finland. We have one in Germany, one in Estonia, three in Nigeria, the country director, and two on the
Mm.
comms side, and then we have the country director in Kenya. And
That's
and
that's a very fastly growing team. I remember when it felt like, or I think it was only you and maybe somebody else.
two, Oki and I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, these days we work a bit in Europe as well, so doing market
Mm,
country between European countries as well. But I think these events. So at the core of remote is this idea of um, changing the modus operandi of European slash American companies and how they
mm,
worked previously with the African companies or
mm,
idea that, hey, we've created this shiny object, please let's dump it here, please give us all the money, um, uh, just take it and use it, and let's take out all the money away. I mean, this is sounds harsh, but this is exactly what has been happening.
mm,
So our whole idea is how do we create win-win relationships, and
mm,
it's not an idea of we've created this, use it as is, but it's how do we work together, how do we cooperate to make this
mm.
product on a long term, or service on a long term basis, even more valuable. And this
Yeah.
is what yeah, so this is
And
what
it
we
really
focus.
shines through in the kind of the diversity of who you're helping and the collaboration. So you had tech CEOs, you had VCs, you had NGOs
Yeah,
represented at this one particular dinner that you did, and then I think
yeah.
you've done a VC mixer as well. If you want to highlight like one project you feel really proud of in terms of what remote, like a client example, I know you could probably or would like to highlight many different cases to show the diversity of your things, but like what's one thing you've been super proud of in terms of a work related project?
One thing, what should we pick? I think we could start with, for example, on the AI angle. Um,
Hmm.
so one of our clients came in with this uh, idea of, hey, we're creating these cool AI
Hmm.
things for different companies out here. Uh, is there a possibility in the African continent? And of course, when you look at the African continent from a maybe generic perspective, it looks like the whole continent is way far behind. But when you think from the leaps that have previously happened, particularly the mobile.
Yeah, you jumped straight into 3G and
yeah. So I mean, we jumped from not using desktop computing to straight into mobile, right? And I think there are so many more opportunities of that to happen in the continent. And so taking that up and being able to go to different countries to on a feasibility study perspective to find out if this is actually true. Can we actually make business? And to actually have a few of these cases where it's been proven, I think has been really, really cool.
Yeah, I think one interesting idea I've discussed is like I'm talking about the skipping things, right? So AI might be able to help with education in the continent in a whole different way. So you might skip a few beats in educational parts, where everybody could have like tutors, like AI tutors in every home across the continent, where it's hard to give catered individual teaching to kids in their language and with enough attention that for example you would have in other places in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's maybe something in Western countries as well, where classes are getting bigger and so on. We might kind of start wrapping things up. I think our story is highlighted through basketball. I think we just like play together and then both ended up being like in the entrepreneurial scene and so on. And there's like different ways of being entrepreneurs. Talking about the pictures I took from this particular event, this is one. So your Estonian friend brought a ginger shot, and this was his own homemade thing, right? And this was really good. And I think like that's also highlights the randomness. So this guy who's in construction brings his own side project, which is a ginger shot.
Yes.
So this was super good. I don't know if it's a product yet, but I really enjoyed this.
It is a product. So I'll link him up to you so you can promote his
market
product.
it some more. So it was good enough for me not taking any pictures. I took pictures of this. And the other picture I took. So the person who did the food for this event was the head chef of one of the most prestigious hotels in Helsinki, if I'm not mistaken. Do I remember correctly?
Second sous chef or one of those, but yeah, he has a African background. He's from Gambia originally, and has been making these amazing dishes with the African twist.
It was really good.
It was super
really
good. Yeah, absolutely.
I've never seen some of those. So he took like the traditional Gambian taste and raw material and made something beautiful out of it. I think this is the dessert.
Yeah.
And then so like to highlight here also, you can be an entrepreneur and there's and be your own entrepreneur within the culinary scene. And I think here in this particular case, like the individual really shown through in what they do. Like you help companies collaborate and bridge gaps between different continents. He uses his home as an inspiration to bring out this culinary experience. Personally, I've done events now. I try to turn into media, but in terms of events, here's one picture of us that I remember us taking. So this was at the
so,
Slush
yeah,
I think a year and a half ago. I helped organize the Maki VC, Lightspeed, Atomico party, and there was one person I wanted to invite to that party. There was you, so there's you, and then there's Lars Lires and my friend from Norway. I remember you guys hanging out. He's a VC, Futurum VC, and then my partner Rosalie, and then me wearing a Gubbe t-shirt because she was working for Gubbe at the time. So I decided to be the biggest advertising. How do you say it? Because we're
billboard.
And it's always been a pleasure hanging out with you, and I think we have super meaningful discussions around. For the listeners, if there's one thing you would need help with right now, and something you would like to ask the audience or a business challenge you're having, what would that be?
Growing more, shedding more light, showing more visibility towards the opportunities in the African markets. I think many times people brush over the fact that Asia has become a success story. Southeast Asia has been really growing, especially for those who invested early. The last 5-7 years have seen really great returns. And still people are neglecting the fact that the African continent is, the place that has the biggest opportunity for growth. And at the position where Southeast Asia was 7 years ago on growing at an exceptionally faster pace. And I think that there is still a misconception of what the continent is, what it offers. And
I think we all
ask. My only ask is to be a bit more curious, to find out what opportunities are there. Ask the right people who can give you answers on, what.
And if you don't know who the right people are, it's PJ and Remote, and then you'll find the right people, right?
I am one of them.
You're one of them.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But you can help people point in the right direction if they want to show their curiosity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, PJ, for your time. It's been a pleasure as always. Reach out to Pierre on LinkedIn. We'll also drop Pierre's email for you to reach out, and hope everybody is inspired to show more curiosity towards the African market. If you're listening to this,
Nikki, I have to say that we did we switched spots now, because I think, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago, I did an interview with you.
I asked you where it is. It's somewhere in the depths of
somewhere, but it was super cool because it was, finding out
that was an hour and a half. So if I find that, I can let's put it through an AI to summarize the thought, because we went on that one, and I can't remember where it was released, but we can get back to the audience on that. Thank you, PJ. I'll end the recording here.
Wait a minute.